Hey everybody, it's Derek and welcome back to CRM Tip of the Day's Video Tips, your source for tips and step-by-step instruction on the latest version of Microsoft Dynamics CRM. So in today's video, I thought we would go ahead and take a look at a feature that a lot of people are talking about, and that's Connected Field Service. And so obviously with the advent of Dynamics 365, one of the really highly anticipated features that made this release was Connected Field Service, which really gives you the ability to take IoT devices that are being monitored inside an Azure IoT Hub and surface any alerts that are generated from those devices inside Dynamics 365. Now, from the use case standpoint, if you start thinking about, maybe you're a company that services air conditioners or whatever the situation would be, I would now maybe have a situation where I could go ahead and wait for that item to ping some type of alert. Maybe it's a temperature sensor inside of a server room. Once that item pings a certain alert, now I would have the capabilities to go ahead and do a variety of things from within the application. Maybe I want to remotely reset that particular device. Maybe I want to go in and I want to dispatch somebody out because I can't fix it from a technician perspective. This is what's going to enable that functionality for you to go ahead and build these IoT connected services inside Dynamics 365. So let's go ahead and hop into the application and take a look at this. Now, I really want to be clear kind of upfront. What we're going to do here is talk about how the solution is set up and how you configure connected devices inside the Dynamics 365 application. We'll also talk a little bit about how things are deployed to the Azure IoT Hub and how that gets created. But to really consume this and build solutions that you and your customers are going to use, you are going to have to kind of build the connected devices and build the alerting functionality to be able to communicate with that item so it knows exactly what to send into Dynamics 365. So to demo the concepts, we're actually going to use the simulator that's built into the application as far as the IoT Hub when it's deployed. So you can actually very easily kind of get up and running, put it through its paces, and see some of the use cases from inside the application on what you might be able to do with it. So with that being said, let's kind of talk through some of the deployment capabilities in regards to what you're going to be doing. So obviously one of the new features inside the application, if we go into settings and we go into the Dynamics Marketplace, this will take us out to the Dynamics Marketplace where we can download and install the Connected IoT solution. So we'll go ahead and just do a quick little search here for our Connected Field Service. Here's our Connected Field Service. So we'll go ahead and click on free trial. We'll agree to the terms. So next we're going to get your standard agree to terms of service. Then it's going to give you kind of your privacy statement information. So then we're going to determine what specific organization we want to go ahead and deploy this to. And so inside your org, you'll go ahead and choose which option you want. And again, if you have a trial org, you would have the capabilities to go ahead and provision a trial Azure subscription to be able to host this information and then work with items from there. But we'll go ahead and just kind of pick an org that we want to work with. So then the next piece to the puzzle is it's going to verify what subscription you want to use. And then it's going to ask you for a resource group name. So this is where you have to have some type of active Azure subscription, whether it's a trial or whether it's a subscription that you currently own. Now you're going to go ahead and create a resource group. Now, natural inclination is when you see this, you assume that you actually have to go in and create the resource group inside Azure before you can go ahead and deploy it. And actually, if you try to do that, you will get a few errors. It just won't complete its authorization process. So what you're basically going to do in this situation is you're going to go ahead and you're just going to kind of make up a name from that standpoint. So in this case, we'll just pick our deployment region. And then the other option that I can do is I can enable Power BI integration. So what's basically going to happen is it'll create a SQL database behind the scenes that I can use to store information about this IoT device. So I basically could turn around and surface it inside a Power BI tile inside Dynamics 365. So if you wanted to enable that integration or that functionality, what you would basically do is create a generic login for that information as well as a SQL password and then confirm the password. Now, just turning that functionality on isn't necessarily going to go ahead and start displaying Power BI alerts inside your org. What you would then have to do at that point is you'd actually have to use Power BI Desktop. You'd have to connect to it, create the report. Then you'd have to go ahead and publish the report up to your Power BI online. Then once you've done that, obviously you can take your connected Dynamics 365 environment and then you could surface that tile inside the application. So depending upon response to the video and what people think, we can actually go ahead and do that at some point in time and walk you through that procedure. But today we'll go ahead and focus more on just the setting up of the connected field service device. So I'm going to go ahead and hit deploy. Now what this is going to do is this is just really going to verify my subscription, and then it's going to go on, it's going to create the Azure IoT Hub out inside of Azure. Now this takes quite a bit of time to be able to go ahead and facilitate that. So one of the things that you'll notice at this point is it'll walk through a series of kind of checks and balances to create each element that it needs inside there. Depending upon the scenario, I mean, it could take, up to 45 minutes to actually successfully go through and deploy that information. Now, once it's been deployed, and I have one that I've done in the past, once it's been deployed at this point, then it will go ahead and show you exactly what that information looks like. So it shows you the IoT Hub that it does, the query messaging. Basically, once you get a success message on all of that information, then you can go ahead and authorize the subscription. And so when you authorize it, at that point in time, then it's going to take you out into your Azure subscription, into your Azure IoT Hub. And then this is where you're going to go ahead and basically confirm that this is okay to access from the system. So it'll get a message here that'll basically tell you that the item has not been authorized. Do you want to go ahead and authorize it? So then you'll go ahead and you'll click on Authenticate it. What's it going to call it? I would just use the default name of Dynamics CRM Online. You'll hit Authorize. It'll then go out, authenticate you to your application. Then you can save your changes. And then at that point in time, you're pretty much good to go. So one of the things that it actually does is it creates a simulator inside the resource group for this particular item that you're working with. So you can now go into your resource groups inside Azure, and you can actually connect to it. So in this case, I'm going to just go ahead and connect to one that we've created. So here is my IoT Hub that was created for that item that I worked with. So I'll go ahead and I will click on that. And so inside there now, I will see a simulator demo. This is the demo for the thermostat. So now when I go ahead and I click on the item for the thermostat demo, it'll then show me the URL associated with it. And so if I come over into here, I can basically take this simulator URL, I can copy and paste it into a web browser, and then it's going to open up my simulator. And so this is basically the item that you're going to use to test your functionality inside Dynamics 365. Now, the first thing that you have to do is you have to connect this simulator to your IoT Hub so you can go ahead and use it. So you're going to go into your connection string, and the connection string is going to basically ask you for the host that you want to use, which is really going to be your IoT Hub inside Azure. So if I go back into Azure and I go into my IoT Hub, I can basically take this name here, and then I can just kind of copy and paste it into my thermostat simulator. And then the final piece is it needs to know what policy and what key we want to use associated with that policy to actually physically make the connection to our IoT Hub. So then again, back in Azure, if I go into shared access policies, I will see my IoT Hub owner, which is kind of the default policy that we're going to use for purposes of this demo. I'll basically come into here, grab the primary key, copy and paste that into my thermostat simulator connection. And now I have connected my thermostat simulator to my IoT Hub. And at this point, I am ready to go. Now I can go ahead and start registering my devices inside Dynamics 365 and then working with that information from there. So now I'm going to go back into Dynamics 365 and I'm going to go into field service settings. So for the most part, the way that this architecture is created is it actually uses a connection between the customer asset record inside field service and what's called a register device inside IoT. So what I'm basically going to do is I'm going to create a new customer asset. And if you're unfamiliar with field service functionality, basically a customer asset would be a piece of equipment that would be sitting out at a customer site. And now we may have an agreement to service that. That may have been something that we installed, but it's basically sitting out at a customer site, and it's an item that we provide service on. So what I'm going to do at that point is that I'm going to go ahead and just click on New to create a new customer asset. I'll give it a name. So in this case, we'll call it associate it with an account. And now there's a concept of parent assets and kind of child assets inside the application. In this case, if I wanted to, I could associate it with a parent asset. If I have my field service portal information, I could expose this asset to the customer out on the portal. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead and kind of leave it as it is, and I'm going to go ahead now and create a device ID for this option. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and create a device ID. We'll just call this tip of the day device, and then we'll hit save. So what this is doing is this is creating the device, the customer asset. The next thing that I need to do at this point in time is I need to register this as a IoT device that is connected to my IoT Hub. Now, the way I can do that is up on the command bar, there is a register devices option. So I'll go ahead and click on register devices, and this will go ahead and register this asset as a IoT device inside the application. And this just kind of runs in the background. It takes a few minutes to be able to go ahead and facilitate that. Now, while this is going through its motions, if I go back into my main menu and I go into Internet of Things, so these are some of the different items that you can see inside your IoT scenario. You can see the registration history for different devices that you've tried to register. You can see alerts that have been generated by these specific IoT devices if they've reach the threshold that was designed for that IoT device. So in this case, if it reaches a specific temperature, it's going to trigger an alert inside the application so we can go ahead and act on that. We also have this concept of device categories. So based upon what you want to do, you can create different categories to obviously categorize your IoT devices inside your implementation, maybe based upon the different types of IoT devices that you're working with. Now in this case, if I just go ahead and go back into IoT, I can go ahead and click on registered devices. Now, in some cases, these devices might have, other components or other items that are attached to them that might also make part of the different alerts. There is this concept of adding, kind of child devices and items from that standpoint, but this is what would give you the capabilities to, once those devices are registered inside the application, this would give me the ability to go ahead and work with them. So these are different devices that have basically been registered. This is one that we had kind of registered earlier, that basically uses that same kind of thermostat functionality. So here's that tip of the day device that I registered. I can open it up. And this is really going to show me all kind of the baseline information about this particular situation. It'll show me the information around the account that it's associated with. It'll show me the category of the device if I want to go ahead and categorize the device. It'll basically show me all my baseline information about this particular situation. So once this device has been registered, now I could go ahead and, in our purposes, go ahead and consume it as part of the simulator. So if I go into my thermostat simulator, I can go ahead and refresh my devices. And after I do a refresh, that IoT device will show up here, and I will be able to use the IoT device and work with it from there. Since I already have one registered, we'll go ahead and use this web device just to kind of speed things along a little bit. So let's simulate an event, something that's going to take place that could potentially cause an issue. So now what I'm going to do in here is I'm going to go ahead and simulate the event. So I'm going to go ahead and bump the temperature up to 90 degrees. I'm going to wait for my message in here to basically register that it's noticed that the temperature has been set to 90 degrees. So I'm registering that a message inside the application. Based upon the threshold that was built into this connected, into the item that we built for this program, it basically registers an event or something over a certain threshold that's at like 70 degrees. And so that is going to trigger an alert for anything over 70 degrees. So now if I were to go back into my application and I were to go back into my registered devices, I would basically be able to see that, okay, I have an issue. I have a temperature reading inside here that exceeded the threshold of 70 degrees inside the application. Now, depending upon what the situation was, I could go ahead and I could open this up. Now, what's cool about this from a temperature perspective is this actually has gone in and created, and there is a out-of-the-box business process flow that would basically guide me through what I would do from a step-by-step procedural standpoint as a technician trying to work on this inside the application. So now I have a few different options as the technician who is dealing with this. Obviously, I could go ahead and move it through, escalate it from a case, create a work order, schedule the work order, and then move during that procedure. Or the other option that I would be able to do is there's this concept of commands. And so maybe I'm going to try to remotely administrate this device and see if I can fix it. So I can come up here onto this alert and I can hit create command. And this is going to open up a command that I can send remotely to this device. So now in this case, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to call this reset. And then down here, it's going to ask me what message I want to send. And so basically, these are just JSON commands that I'm going to go ahead and initiate inside the application. So I'm going to go ahead and type in my command. This is basically a command that resets the thermostat to its normal threshold. I could go ahead and I could automatically set the temperatures to specific thresholds using these exabe type of commands, any number of different situations. But in this case, we'll just go ahead and use this command to reset it. So I'm going to go ahead and send and close this. And now, if I go back into my thermostat simulator, what's basically going to happen is once it receives that command, it's going to reboot the thermostat. And so it'll come in here at this point after that command gets sent to the individual item. We will see the actual simulator in here reboot. It'll reboot the thermostat, and then we could go, and then it'll be basically back to the item that we saw. And we'll actually see that in the messages received area in there as well. So we can see kind of a history in regards to what happened to that device as we sent that information across. So give this just a second. So now I can see the message has been received. It's actually going in, it's rebooting the device. It's going to kick it back to the regular temperature rating that they've defined for the device. So that is our look into Connected Field Service and introduction. I think the cool thing to really think about this too is it uses the connection rule, as we talked about kind of earlier on in the video. So it doesn't necessarily just have to be customer assets inside the application. Think about the fact that you really can create a connection to the IoT record for any type of option that you want to work with, which now gives you the capabilities to bring some of this IoT functionality into other aspects of your application. So I hope you enjoyed it. Again, thank you very much for watching. And for all of us here at CRM Tip of the Day, this has been Derek saying thanks again, take care, and have a good one.